Hello, this is Pars. I'm going to be doing a little reading thing here. This is my new essay called The Only Red Toyota RAV4. It's more or less a recut slash director's cut, expanded upon essay thing that I wrote today when I was bored because I read uh, an essay by Tim Rogers called What We Might Mean When We Say a Clock is Wrong. He did a reading of it, and I was inspired to do the same thing here. So we're going to kind of see how it goes. I have a little video thing down here just so we could fill space because simply scrolling through a text would be kind of boring. We're going to get through it. This is my first draft. I haven't really edited it at all. Excuse the really loud cars because that holy shit, dude. That's like 2 blocks away, even more. And that's loud as hell. But anyways, I said this is a rough draft. I'm going to try to do it in one take. I've been really bad with reading scripts out loud. I tend to trip over my words way more than I probably let on when I do an edited final version. Editing audio tends to be the most difficult process of editing for me. But I'm going to try to go through it. I'm not going to read it word for word. There's a couple things here that I might like smooth over and as I'm reading through it. So we're going to hopefully do this in a timely manner. This is The Only Red Toyota RAV4, or Girls I Used to Fall in Love With, director's cut. This is a story of a dreaming boy. He only has 4 interconnected stories. No other stories happened after that. This is all that remains. The summer before I entered my final year of childhood, I broke my ankle, though it's more accurate to say that my ankle was broken, and it was my fault. I used to play baseball at the Park District, and I was no longer as interested in it as I once was. My team made it to the championship that year. My position was a catcher, and I would squat in my protective equipment and helmet behind home plate in the summer heat for a number of innings. I was not very good at being a catcher, and I was scared at the ball. The older I grew, the less confident I became with my ability and hand-eye coordination, and oftentimes found myself walking into things or fumbling with the items in my hand. The older I grew, the faster my peers pitched the ball. I already knew this would be the last game, and my heart was no longer in that game. I suited up for one last time on that year's cloudless 4th of July. My second to last time at the plate, I almost got an in the park home run, but was caught in a rundown between home and third. I struck out every other time I batted. In the final inning of the game, I was still squatting behind the plate, trying desperately to protect my crotch from catching the full force of our pitcher's curveballs. One of the other team's best batters hit the next pitch deep into center field. They had a runner on second, and he was already set on making it home. The fielder relayed the ball from 300 feet out. I was protecting home plate, and the runner was rounding third as our second baseman was hurtling the ball towards me. I decided to step towards the ball and block the runner's path. I knew this was a terrible decision, but I did it anyways. The next thing I knew, I had dirt in my mouth and I was lying on my stomach, but I was not in pain. And the first thing I thought of was, not again. The warm discomfort of the trauma to my leg slowly throbbed, and I already knew it was broken. I let my ankle be broken. I remembered my 7th grade softball coach yelling at me in practice once, saying, "Don't try to be a hero," when I dove to field the ball. Here I still tried and was foolish for doing so. I had not yet learned my lesson. I later learned we lost the game. I spent the rest of the summer lying on a couch in the front room of our apartment. Much of my time thereafter was spent reading books and watching YouTube videos on my Kindle Fire HD. I started to get into Minecraft Let's Plays and watched every PewDiePie video around the time. A few of my teammates came to visit me in mid-July. We joked about things I no longer remember, and they told me that we lost the game. I smiled and said something along the lines of, "Dang, we were so close." I don't think any of them came to visit after that. I didn't worry about the game we lost because I knew my absence played no part in that loss. School started up again in late August as it always did. I was on crutches still, so I needed someone to help me move between classes. This also meant I was able to get out of classes about 5 to 10 minutes early to give me extra time to hobble along. During my first class of the year, I told my teacher about it, and she asked the class if anyone wanted to help me out. I didn't really have any friends in that class at the time. A chubby guy in a red Flash pullover offered his time. I vaguely remembered him as being a friend of a friend or something. We quickly became best friends. He eventually bought the same shoes as me. He gave me his sealed copy of Pokemon Soul Silver for the Nintendo DS because he wanted to get me into Pokemon. I never had a friend like him before, and I would never have a friend like him after that. We talked about our shared interest in video games, YouTube videos, and internet forums. One day after school, he invited me over to his house to hang out. We played New Super Mario Bros. U and Nintendo Land on his brand new Wii U, and his mom brought us a mountain of Totino's pizza rolls. I thought the gamepad was awesome. As night fell, we decided to play Slender on his laptop and videotaped our best early 2010s YouTube Let's Play reactions. We decided that we wanted to make our own YouTube videos together one day. 2 years later, we would be making YouTube videos on our own, but we had already stopped talking to one another. In the fall of my final year of middle school, my best friend introduced me to his childhood friend. She was his neighbor and had really long hair. She also liked video games and YouTube. She was also really friendly, more friendly than any other girl I had met before. Girls had stopped talking to me sometime in the 3 years I spent in this school, and I don't really know when things got so weird. I quickly became good friends with this girl. I introduced my other book nerd friend to them, and we all became a tight-knit group. I always thought a friend group like this only existed in comics or fiction that I used to read. Those days were like a victory lap on Rainbow Road. We would recite internet jokes offline and giggle about the new YouTube videos we watched that night before. On weekends, we'd sit in a Skype call and play Minecraft all day. Every time I think back on those days, I wish things had gone differently. In the spring, we went on a class trip halfway across the country. My class sat in a tour bus, and someone hosted a Mario Kart DS local game. I played as Luigi and stomped on everyone. That was before I cared to track my time spent playing a game, because I had spent a lot of time playing Mario Kart DS. Me and my best friend smirked as we handily traded blows, beating everyone in the class. My friend, who was also a girl, was unfortunately on another bus in another class. I wish she stayed on that bus. On the first night in the hotel, I slept in a room with my chubby best friend and the weird kid at school. He was about a foot shorter than everyone else and as skinny as a rail. He really liked playing Doom, and that was the first time I'd heard of that old game. He always acted strange and would say passive-aggressive things to girls. That night, we turned off the lights and chatted about girls. The weird kid voluntarily slept on the floor. We couldn't see each other's nervousness in the darkness of the hotel room. My chubby best friend confessed that he liked a really popular girl that no one really thought was all that attractive. My new skinny friend giggled nervously. My chubby best friend told me that his childhood friend liked me. The only person who ever liked me was a girl who looked about 5 years older than everyone else, and I only learned that after she moved away. "Did you know she liked you?" they used to ask me. "I didn't," I replied with a confused face. I never let on how self-aware I was about romance. I used to read young adult fiction aimed at preteen girls and secretly liked cute love stories. Taylor Swift's Love Story was one of my favorite songs on the radio. But I never fell in love. I didn't know what to do with this information my best friend gave to me now. I don't remember the trip all that well after that. I have a few awkward pictures left on a hard drive somewhere, but I can't bring myself to look at them anymore. Over the course of the subsequent weeks, things got weird. My Rainbow Road stopped sparkling. When we got back to school, nothing was ever the same. I wanted things to go back to how it used to be. I had dreamt of one day talking about girls on a school trip with my best friends, but now I wish I had less romantic dreams. The girl with long hair started to get really close with me, and I accepted her advances. One afternoon, I was hanging out with my best friend. breathing in the helium from balloons in his basement and making funny voices. The girl came over. My friend's expression darkened and something changed with him that day. At least that is what I told myself before. But now I know that I was the one who changed. He messed around with a pocket knife and even threatened her with it. He was not serious about it, but he looked just very confused. He quickly realized his mistake and ran away. We left after and never spoke of it again. It only occurred to me recently why he did that. I stole both of his best friends, and he was now lonely. This one girl tried to convince me to hug her during art class. I let her embrace me. The midsummer sun filtered through the trees just beyond the window she sat in front of. I set down the watercolor paints and looked up to see the sunlight reflecting across the jars lining the windowsill. I didn't have it in me to look in her eyes. There was an emotion spreading across her face that 8th grade me could hardly understand. She was my new best friend, but I have never seen her make that face before. But that was a half-truth, as I already knew why. I suspected the same thing. Nobody had to spell it out for me. I had read enough John Green to understand how you felt about me, but I pretended not to notice. I let her hand slip out of my sweaty hand, never to see her again. I admired the girl who sat in the corner of my 9th grade English class. Her short hair dyed black, dark mascara carefully framing chestnut-colored eyes, and thin fingers picking out of an oversized sweater. She never took her earphones out, and I wondered what she was listening to. For a year, I had at least one reason to be excited about that class. Sometimes she'd even look in my general direction, and I'd create fantastic narratives in my head. I, of course, expertly looked away just in time, though I later learned that she was looking at the guy behind me. I started speaking to her the summer after my first year of high school. My 15th summer, I was a dizzy dreamer running beneath the cloudless skies, thinking about the world that very well could be. Nights spent private messaging alternative girls I knew from school on an old iPod Touch. I got quite good at learning people's names by cyberstalking them on Instagram. A bit too good. I worked up the courage to complete My Chemical Romance and Fall Out Boy song lyrics on their angsty social media posts with ulterior motives written all across my prepubescent face. Those artsy photos of a heavily curated life were a window to a world I could only fantasize about. I wanted to hold her hand, because maybe she was going to be the one that saves me. After all, she was I started talking to her online. Small talk about the most inconsequential topics, but for me it was the most exciting thing in the world. When school started, we were strangers. However, one day we met before school started, got some chocolate milk in the cafeteria, and walked around the building talking like it was the most natural thing in the world. My heart did not beat with excitement, though. I don't remember what we said, but I was able to hold a decent conversation back then. I remember feeling somewhat proud when my friends in first period teacher walked past us and saw me with a girl. I continued to chat a bit after that until I realized that she had a girlfriend. But at that point, I had already moved on. My crush of the following year was a quirky girl in my geometry class who looked like Suzumiya Haruhi. I stalked this new girl online and offline. I learned her name, phone number, Instagram, friend group, interests, and class schedule before she knew I existed. I finally talked with her on the Halloween of 2015. I slipped a post-it note into her locker because I still wanted to believe in the romance depicted in my Japanese animes. She was dressed up as a Doctor Who character. I had tried to watch Doctor Who the previous year because the last girl was a fan of it, but I couldn't finish an episode of it. I tried to force a conversation while she must have been trying to figure out if I was a threat or not. My heart was beating so hard I thought she could hear it. Love was exciting, and everything that happened before had been leading up to this moment. I would chat with her whenever I could, and I got to know more about her. And every moment I saw her, my heart was sent aflutter. The most meaningless conversations were the highlights of my day. One-off messages she sent me had me grinning like a love-struck idiot through the night. She was the one, and I wanted to spend every moment with her. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I didn't sleep. I did nothing but think of her. Keep me under your spell. But I hardly knew her. Fall turned to winter, and our conversations became more meaningful and tired, and she still held me at an arm's length. It was almost time. I was no longer afraid to say that I loved her. Hopelessly romantic, I wanted to confess on a more special day, so I waited patiently, high off my own chemical romance and still love-struck 1 month later. I was riding my bike home from school on a cold February afternoon, the day before Valentine's Day. Two fingers intertwined, smiling. My head jerked back to witness myself being NTR'd before my eyes. Warm streaks on my cheeks froze in the lingering winter air. At first I cried, then I sulked, and finally I grew terribly bitter. Not at her, but at myself. I never recovered. Happy Valentine's Day 2015. I listened to American football's Never Meant on repeat. The song was about me and her. I bought a green flannel button-down shirt and took pictures of dead trees. Spring flowers brought sour feelings. Summer finally came, but ended all too quickly, before another crimson Midwestern fall greeted me once again. Overwhelmed with mountains of schoolwork, poor grades, high expectations, no free time, and nobody by my side to set my heart at ease, I slowly felt my mask of sanity breaking down. Some insignificant day in late September, I came back from another terrible day at school. It was not particularly egregious, but I had sunken so far into myself that I could not escape the turmoil of emotions within me anymore. Alone in the bathroom, I reached for a pair of beauty scissors. They were dull, but they were enough to draw red shooting stars on my wrist. Within the hour, I was messaging a girl from another state on Facebook. I met her a few months back on Tinder, and we exchanged a few messages. I didn't think we were even friends at the time. I started using Tinder as a joke, but quickly began to use it more seriously than most. It was almost cathartic. Now she was holding a sign that read, "You're a cute guy. Want to be my complimentary angle?" I didn't feel secondhand embarrassment or cringe at her invitation to homecoming, but it never really felt right, though. Something was all wrong. My love felt all wrong. I didn't feel anything towards her, but she was now my light at the end of the tunnel. I had never been to a dance before, and I had never been on a date before. I wanted to take the previous girl to get ice cream once, but never had the chance to do so. I also didn't have a car. I realized how crazy it'd be to go to another state for a homecoming dance with a girl I met on Tinder half a year ago. So I turned her down. It broke my heart, but I declined. And I felt her soul shatter the moment I saw the red confirmation on my sent message. She deleted the picture from Instagram, but not before I screenshotted the post. I never heard from her again. Now I wonder if she really saw something in me, or if it was a prank I narrowly avoided humiliating myself in. I still don't know how to process information regarding a girl actually liking me as something other than a cruel joke. That was just a foolish chapter, and now it's time to wake up. Now it was 2017, the last stretch of high school, and I had no fears left. I was playfully messaging my friend's cousin, puppy love turning serious faster than I can control. What started off as a joke unraveled into a difficult situation of teenage emotions and a one-sided romance. Dazzled and confused, my 17-year-old brain was still blinded by the allure of 3D PD. She was in the yearbook club and invited me to hang out after the senior picnic when her job was done. I accepted her invitation to hang out after the senior picnic. But that isn't what I wanted. In her head, she wanted me to be something that I was no longer capable of being. I wanted her to be something girls could never be. I felt terrible. The promised day finally arrived. She kept messaging me, but the length of time between my replies grew longer. Once bitten, twice shy, and I was bitten thrice. My love still felt all wrong. Pulsating neon lights of 1,000 stars dancing across her face illuminated the softest of the features amidst the darkness, our imperfections bubbling to the surface, but no longer on my mind. She was still at the table handing out yearbooks, and reminded me that she was almost done, then personally handed me my yearbook. I half smiled, expressing a difficult expression I can't recreate today even if I tried. I turned away and never looked back. I had a cold hamburger in one hand, an unsigned yearbook under the other, and I walked out of the school 3 hours early. The feelings bubbled to the surface after a life of disappointments and self-sabotage. I didn't even know if I ever wanted it. I think I was simply looking for a cure to my unhappiness. I frequently go back to my 15th summer in the time just before I fall asleep. I remember the first girl I could have never been with, even if I was someone else, someone better. In grade school, I had experienced inklings of something that could hardly be considered love in the years before. I silently observed girls and created narratives in my head. To me, they didn't exist as anything but a blank canvas to paint over. They probably were not real. The girl who liked girls and had dyed black hair once was my first real love. Someone who was so close within reach that I could almost touch her if I wanted to. I saw the possibilities in my head made possible through the romance stories I had spent far too long lingering on. I remembered blushing when I learned her name and how it reminded me of a certain character in a Neil Gaiman novel. She probably liked that novel. I remembered catching a glimpse of her dressed up one Friday morning for school. She was wearing black leggings under a plaid skirt and a 3 Cheers for Sweet Revenge t-shirt. Her makeup looked wonderful. I never knew a girl my age who wore makeup before. She stepped out of a red Toyota rav4. Every day thereafter, I looked for that red Toyota rav4 before or after school to maybe see her again. I still catch myself looking for that car. I drive a nondescript gray 2002 Honda Accord sedan, and I don't think anyone's ever thought twice about me or my car. But my heart still skips a beat whenever I see a little red crossover SUV that appears before me. It reminds me of the world that never was, the world that could have been. So that was that. A little bit underfined. I think I tripped over my words a little bit towards the end. And obviously, like I said, it's a bit of a rough draft. I think it's going to be fine as it is. I'm not going to mess around too much with it. Like I said, it was expanded upon the ideas that I introduced in my Girls I Used to Fall in Love With. A lot of it seems pretty recycled. I maybe added like 20 to 30%. The whole beginning chapter is new. I didn't know how much I wanted to talk about that specific moment. The middle school arc, I think I've mentioned before, alluded to, is really important to my narrative, I suppose. But I didn't want to get too much into it. Hence why this is going to be privated or unlisted, I should say, somewhere on a playlist, somewhere on YouTube. The post itself is going to be published. It's just I don't want to publicly show my reading, since more people will actually see the reading and will actually stumble upon the post naturally. Like I might put it on my website, for example. But yeah, I think that was about it. I think when I was reading it, though, I didn't know the whole thing about Tinder, and I always thought it was weird that I think at the time I was 16 or 17 and I was on Tinder. I didn't know you could use Tinder at that age until I think I saw something on Reddit or whatever. Maybe like a Forever Alone subreddit, because I used to fuck with that subreddit. But I think someone else posted something and I'm like, wait, for real? You can actually get on this site when you're 17? Or even before 18? So I messed around with it. And I always thought that was weird. That was a weird arc in my life. And the last thing I wanted to mention was the shirt. The sweet 3 Cheers for Sweet Revenge t-shirt by it's a My Chemical Romance t-shirt from their second studio album, 3 Cheers for Sweet Revenge, my favorite My Chemical Romance record. I have a t-shirt of that, a bootlegged t-shirt, if you will, and I still wear it occasionally. I was going to wear it for this reading, but I decided to wear my my little sweater thing because it's kind of cold in my room right now. I could have put it over, but I didn't. I bought that one partially because of this, but also because of I like the record. I liked it before I even met her. It was because of someone else in middle school that introduced me to it. But I digress. And all this is obviously true. I still see that red Toyota RAV4 specific model. I don't remember the year. It was probably like 2014, 2015 model. I don't know Toyota RAV4s all that well. It's just that red is a particular eye-catching color, and it's not something that's very common. Like, you go outside and you see a lot of black, white, and silver cars, and red was a striking color. It was the one that caught my eye in more ways than one. And even to this day, like I mentioned, like I can see someone driving a red Toyota RAV4 down the street, and I will immediately associate it with that. But for a long time, it was like a really strong connection that I felt to, like, immediately brought back everything that I wrote here upon seeing that vehicle. I think that's about it. I'm not gonna mess around too much after the fact. If anyone decided to listen to this, thank you for listening. You've just experienced some pretty deep lore, bros. Have a good night, wherever you are.